As I continue to go back through the old zombie storyline, it feels so weird saying that because, I mean, Ether, it's still relative to what we have now, but to me it was so interesting, and one of the reasons for that is I keep going back to it as I do different storyline videos, and every now and again a piece of lore comes up where I'm like, hang on, that was never explained to us, or I totally forgot about that, or even now that many years have passed, I have a different perspective of it, and Blood of the Dead seems to be the map that has the most controversy, that has me raising the most questions again. I did a video just a couple of weeks back talking about how I don't believe it was necessarily the weasel that broke the main cycle of Primus. Check that video out if you haven't already. But as I was continuing to go through Blood of the Dead storyline, even more strange coincidences started to stand out for me. And one of those was the dark mechanism. This device that Richtofen in the end places himself into to extract his blood, allowing Primus to tear a hole through the ether so they can escape the Alcatraz pocket dimension. Because of the quote set in game from Richtofen and the Warden himself, I've always been of the belief that it was the Warden that built the dark mechanism, and it would make sense. His main goal in Alcatraz was to harness Richtofen's blood to allow the apothecans to escape the dark ether. How was he planning to harness Richtofen's blood if it wasn't him that built the dark mechanism? However, on Twitter, Reddit, or as I watch YouTube videos, I have seen other people say they believe it was Richtofen that built the dark mechanism, which, like I said, confused me because the quotes in the game mentioned the Warden's mechanism and the Warden's machine, which would make you think he is referring to the dark mechanism. He built it, and even the name of it. Listening to the radios in Blood of the Dead, which we're going to get into, the Dark Ones refers to the apothecans and the Shadow Man. And the name of the machine, the dark mechanism, would just make you think because the Warden was the Shadow Man's apprentice, in a way similar to what Richtofen was. Although it's never explicitly said to us, there is a lot of evidence that it was the Warden that built the dark mechanism, and storyline wise it just makes sense. How else was he planning to harness Richtofen's blood? But I think I can see where people got the idea that Richtofen built it from, because when I saw this, I even questioned, was the dark mechanism built as a part of the regular cycle, or only as a part of the broken cycle? And if the latter is true, could it have been built by Primus Richtofen then? I still think it was the Warden, and I put this tweet out on Twitter to try and gauge other people's opinions. I had a conversation about this with the Game Revolution, which, because he's probably the only other person that really does consistent storyline videos on zombies, it's always interesting to see other people's answers that are constantly engaged and invested in the zombie story. But he reminded me of a few things that I totally forgot, and, well, made me even more confused. So to make this easier to understand, let me just take it right back to the beginning where these questions started to arise for me. So there are loads of quotes in Blood of the Dead from Richtofen and the Warden that would have you believe it was the Warden who built the dark mechanism.
Oh man, that was beautiful! You guys, what you did for that man, I wish you were half as nice to me!
Oh, would your immortal soul be somehow able to activate the Warden's mechanism? Because if it is, I will happily toss your pod into the bed.
When Richtofen is talking to Stuhlinger, he says to him, would your soul be able to activate the Warden's mechanism? Because if it is, I will toss your body into the pod. When the Warden locks Primus up, he says this:
your life sentence begins. You will suffer. You will not die. Your hearts will beat as everlasting engines in my machine, holding the gateway open so that they will finally be free.
Your hearts will beat as the everlasting engines in my machine, holding the gateway open so that he can be free. We constantly hear about the Warden's machine and the Warden's mechanism in the map, and even in the boss fight when you're battling in front of the dark mechanism, it is at this point the Warden says, now we will begin, as he is trying to capture the final piece of the mechanism.
Now we will begin.
The final piece of the mechanism. We cannot allow the Warden to capture it.
So we can say he built it. But remember, the Warden is simply that, the Warden of a prison. He is not a scientist and engineer, yet somehow he had the knowledge to build such device. He could not have done this alone, and Richtofen even acknowledges that.
How could I have underestimated the Wardens this much? How could he have the knowledge to build... Unless... Nine. The blood is still the key. The only answer.
Questioning how it was even possible that he could have underestimated the Warden. Unless, and then he cuts himself off, but that would suggest he is thinking he had help. Either that or somebody else built it for him. And if we look at the chalkboard in Richtofen's laboratory, well, that tells us two things. One, it being down here indicates it was constructed by someone who had knowledge of the existence of Richtofen's lab, which wasn't many people: Primus, Dr. Maxis, and the Illuminati, and possibly Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. Dr. Monty because he knew about the cycle and the lab was built as a part of it, and the Shadow Man because he was the one that manipulated the Warden into transforming the island into the Alcatraz pocket dimension. That's not to say he definitely knew about the existence of Richtofen's lab, but it's a possibility. However, if the Warden constructed the dark mechanism and we have this chalkboard of it there, that would show he knew about the existence of the lab as well. Just looking at what's being drawn on here, it says ley lines intersect redirect ? Coverages on central hub, wherever that is, constitute interchange A to F, accelerate the reaction, how much equals too much, how did he do it, power source ? No failsafe, madness. The more I look at this, the more it reminds me of the chalk drawings that we've had from Richtofen. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, this could be totally baseless, the word madness being underlined there with the exclamation mark just makes me think that's something Richtofen would say, also outlining the fact that there's no failsafe. If the Warden built it, why would the Warden care that there's no failsafe? At the end of the day, it wasn't for him, its purpose was to extract Richtofen's blood, so why would he care if there was a failsafe or not? And yeah, you can just see on here the fact that it's mentioning ley lines. If it was built by the Warden, this is not knowledge that he alone would have. He would not know about ley lines. The only person that would, to me, is Richtofen. And in that conversation I had on Twitter, I was reminded of the drawings in Blood of the Dead, specifically the one of Ultimis Richtofen. Now, at the time when the map came out in 2018, there are about 5 different drawings you can find in the map. There is another one of Brutus, another of the undead, and then the seagull flying above them, possibly the weasel, and 2 more. One of a person on a boat travelling towards Alcatraz because he's rowing backwards, and you can see he is inside of the pocket dimension because the Golden Gate Bridge is broken. And then on this other image, he is leaving Alcatraz with someone else in the boat with him. We'll come back to these final 2, but the drawing of Ultimis Richtofen shows that at some point he must have been in the Alcatraz pocket dimension. But nowhere in the storyline is that ever mentioned to us, not once. But if we have a drawing of it, then clearly someone there met him. You would think these drawings were done by the Weasel, just knowing what we know about him, but I have seen other people suggest these are the Warden's drawings. Either way, this surely shows that Ultimis Richtofen at some point was, for some reason, at Alcatraz, because there's also no other point in the zombie storyline where an event like this happens. Maybe the classified ending cutscene where Primus meets Ultimis, or the giant intro where Primus Richtofen meets Ultimis Richtofen and then shoots him. But in those situations, the quote, "Who the hell are you?" is not said, and in this image it looks like it is Ultimis Richtofen that has teleported, whereas in both of those it was Primus. So this is an event that we haven't seen, but happened. Ultimis Richtofen teleported to Alcatraz. So as the Gaming Revolution speculated to me, could it have been Ultimis Richtofen that helped the Warden construct the dark mechanism? Because as I said a few minutes ago, both of them were working for the Shadow Man. Ultimis Richtofen was corrupted by the Dark Ether and was his apprentice. He would do everything the Shadow Man told him.
You do know that Richtofen is a friend of mine. I say friend, but really he's so much more than that. At one point, I almost considered him my apprentice. I mean, he did stab my reporter friend and steal the summoning key. But at one point, he did everything I told him to. I keep hoping he'll remember the promise he made to me so long ago.
And the Warden did everything the Shadow Man told him as well, creating the pocket dimension to ensnare Primus Richtofen.
Truth be told, I long for the miracle that will release me.
That's a good lad. You have been an adequate servant. Therefore you will continue to serve after the corruption.
Such an honor. For me.
Not an honor. A purpose. Your life's sentence. Waiting for Dr. Edward Richtofen to walk into the trap.
The Doctor. I've heard mention of him amongst the Illuminati. What would you have of him?
His blood holds great power. You will harness it all and open the way to the paradise below.
I swear, my lord, it will be done.
And one more thing.
Name it, my lord.
Spare him no pain.
Yes, Richtofen shall suffer.
So it would make sense if the Shadow Man wanted the Warden to harness Richtofen's blood, he would need a way to do that, and because the Warden didn't have the knowledge or the expertise, the Shadow Man knew someone else that did, telling Ultimis Richtofen to travel to Alcatraz to help the Warden construct the dark mechanism. Only Richtofen would have knowledge about ley lines, which are mythical lines of energy that run between various historic structures or landmarks. And it could be that's how the cryostasis pods of Victus were powered in the first place. There is a cipher in Gorod Karovi that, since we discovered it, has been a mystery that never made sense, but reading it now, finally, the lab is almost complete. Security measures have been put in place, so the chance of detection by the Americans is very unlikely. We have several agents embedded with the staff as insurance. We will keep the individuals in stasis on ice to speak, and continue the specimen rotation once we finish drawing more power from the drill. Oh, I almost forgot. The sequencing for the current blood samples is as follows: Samuel Stuhlinger, Malton Johnson, Abigail Brighton, Russman. But this cipher mentions drawing more power from the drill. That drill is the one in Nuketown. But Nuketown is in Nevada, and Alcatraz is in San Francisco. They're hundreds of miles from one another. How would Richtofen have harnessed the power of the Nevada drill to power the Alcatraz laboratory? Possibly through ley lines, which would have been done by Primus Richtofen. Hence why on this board he writes, how did he do it? If this was all written by Ultimis Richtofen, that would make sense. It's just at which point in the original timeline would that have happened? We do know there is one point in time that Ultimis Richtofen was unaccounted for, and that was in Ascension, or just before that actually, but in the Ascension poster we see Ultimis, Nikolai, Takio and Dempsey fighting alongside Gersh, the bald man on the poster. During the time that Gersh fought alongside us, Richtofen was somewhere else.
Do you remember Gersh? Bald guy who fought alongside you for a while? I think Richtofen was off somewhere at the time.
As far as I can remember, I might be wrong and this is just without doing research, we never found out where Ultimis Richtofen went, why he ditched the crew for a short amount of time, and what he went to do, what was so important that they couldn't come with him. Could it have been at that time that he went to Alcatraz, helped the Warden construct the dark mechanism, did something that would involve a cosmonaut suit, because when we play as him in Ascension, he is wearing the spacesuit, so when he left the crew, he did something that involved that, maybe going to the moon, but that doesn't have to mean that was the only thing he did. He could have at that time, before, gone to Alcatraz, and then returned back to the rest of the Ultimis crew. Another thought I had was that it was the Shadow Man or the Illuminati that must have helped the Warden to construct the dark mechanism. Perhaps the Shadow Man, after watching Ultimis Richtofen for all that time, learned how to construct the dark mechanism just from observing him, so he could help the Warden. I doubt that one. Or the Illuminati. Since we know Ultimis Richtofen worked with the Illuminati, the Warden also worked with the Illuminati. They were helping him transform the island, and Primus Richtofen worked with the Illuminati. They helped him construct the Alcatraz laboratory.
Yeah, let's build your lab under Alcatraz. It's just a twisted little pocket dimension. What could go wrong? Fucking Illuminati.
The Illuminati played a huge role in everything to do with Alcatraz. They knew about the laboratory. They were one of the only ones, groups, whatever you want to call them, that knew about the existence of Richtofen's lab. They possibly would have had the knowledge to construct such a device. Looking at this now, the most likely of the options to me is that Ultimis Richtofen very much could have helped the Warden to construct the dark mechanism. I have said I did also question for a second, could it have been built only as a part of the broken cycle? That wouldn't make sense because the Warden would have always needed it to harness Richtofen's blood. So I think it was always there, but its not purpose, its outcome I guess, changed. And we know that because looking at the Canorium, this is from the Alpha Omega intro, when the cycle is broken, we see the pages change. However, the drawing of the dark mechanism stays the same. It was originally intended to harness Richtofen's blood to tear a hole through the ether to allow the apothecans to escape the dark ether, but that changed and in the end was used to tear a hole through the ether to allow the Primus crew to escape the Alcatraz dimension. So either scenario, Primus Richtofen was still sacrificed, it's just what his blood was used for ended up being slightly different than what was intended. I said I would go back to these two drawings specifically because they've always been a mystery. We have never known what this is supposed to be depicting. Yes, it's someone traveling to the island and then two people leaving, but who? This can't be Ultimis Richtofen because he teleports there. I don't think this is the Warden because this is in the pocket dimension and he's already there. It does kind of look like this person's wearing a scarf and a hat, which would make you think Dr. Monty, but him going there, especially by boat, wouldn't make sense either. The only other character that we know that wears a hat was Arlington. On this image, we see Arlington in his seagull form, but at the end of Blood of the Dead, when we break the cycle, the souls trapped in the pocket dimension are freed. Now, whether this makes sense storyline-wise or not, whether this could have possibly happened after the cycle was broken and the souls were freed, I don't even know. But once the Weasel was freed from the pocket dimension, was he then picked up from the island and taken back to San Francisco? Is this showing the Weasel, after the cycle is broken, back in his human form, with his spirit back in his mortal body, finally escaping the island? And that would make sense because if these drawings are actually from the Weasel, from things he experienced, then surely only he would experience or would be the only witness to him leaving. He could have seen Ultimis Richtofen arrive in the pocket dimension and meet with the Warden, where they constructed the dark mechanism. He would have seen this event because he was the seagull, and he would have seen this event because he was the one on the boat. So yeah, there we go. Hopefully you've all enjoyed the video today. If you have, drop a like rating, it's always really appreciated. More so, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave your questions and your theories in the comment section below. I'd be interested to read them, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.